Good day, everyone. You're welcome on Justeventsonline TV. I'm Absulkadir Issiaq on Signal Problem, Issues and Realities. Today, we shall be walking through a seemingly murky water of Nigeria, of the Nigerian state. We talk about activism. We talk about the governance, the tolerance of the people in power towards, should I say, activists or political dissent, which has always been a topic of discourse since the inception of Nigeria, even since the pre-colonial times. And but the most recent one we'll talk about is the issue of the what some people would term as the incarceration of Mazin Namdekano and the recent jeerings of the publisher of Sahara Reporter, Omolojede Sowore, to have a protest, which he has done, and we've seen the legal torture that came of it. And but we want to talk about the feelings of the people. Some people will say that, like National Public Secretary of the ADC said recently, that it seems the people now hate their government. I think that is a very bad omen, and a lot of rumors that have been flying around about some people ganging up to steal power through the back door. So we'll talk about this murky terrain and to find a common ground, get the opinion of the analyst we have in studio. Let me bring in my analyst. I have Mr. Ambali Abdulkabir. Is a journalist and a public affairs analyst and a climate actor. You're welcome on the show.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah.
And let's start with the kaka around the incarceration, as some people will say, the detention, as some people will say, the kidnapping, as some people will say, of Mazin Namdekano, and the current uproar from the side of Omiyele Sowore, who has repeatedly said that he stands to gain nothing but justice from the fight for Nnamdi. But some people will say, from the legal perspective, that Nnamdi has not been helping the situation. But so, as you would know, some people have said that this is a political incarceration, and if we want to move forward, we should find a political solution. But this thing has been going on for almost 5 years. It seems that we've not been able to find a political solution to a political problem. We are making a political problem a judicial problem. As a public affairs analyst, how would you describe this issue?
Good evening, viewers, once more. I'm happy to be here, and of course, the topic you brought up, it's a topic that is everywhere. It's been on for years, like you put it, issues of the nature that Nnamdi is facing is purely within the constitutional, discourse of Nigeria. And of course, the beauty of democracy, if you remember, is that there will always be issues. And what is important is that issues, when they come up, should be addressed within the dictate of the constitutions. So if, for instance, someone like Nnamdi who was accused of inciting violence in the southeast, amongst other things, and of course too, of being at the forefront of perpetuating terrorism in the country, such a kind of issues, as you may see it, should have been addressed head on. And I think it is because of the fact that the issue has taken more years than expected. So it now degenerated to a full-blown political issue rather than a mere constitutional issue that it should have been. So for me, someone who was extraordinarily auditioned from Kenya to Nigeria, and having been accused of inciting violence in the southeast, of funding terrorism in some way. So it is the law that will determine what Nnamdi did. And as long as the issue is still within the presence of the court, I think the best we can say here is just that we have to look to what the law says. What is the law as regard what Nnamdi has allegedly done? So now, in the quest to ensure that we balance this thing, because law is important anyway. So the way we interpret our law says a lot about how some of these issues are addressed. So for me, I think this prolonged issue shouldn't have been. The government should have actually determined what issues are, find judicial solutions to them, and this rancor and all of this will have actually ended. So it is unfortunate that the issue is still on. But as you said it is because of the fact that we didn't look at the issue constitutionally. That is why it has taken this far, and it's not even expected.
Let's start from the beginning of this thing. There has always been, separatist agitation in the history of Nigeria since the 1960s. Even before the 1960s, there was a time when the people of the Southern Protectorate were prepared to go to get their independence. The Northerners said, no, we're not ready. And the United Kingdom then said, okay, we want you to go at once. We don't want you to go. Because I think Nigeria was supposed to be the first independent state in the West Africa, but because of the alleged backwardness of the North then. But look at it from this angle. Some people would say that Nnamdi Kanu and his agitation, to some extent, have some legitimacy because we are human beings in a democracy have right to self-determination. What he has always clamored for is self-determination, and that's what Ken Saro-Wiwa did in 1995. He was killed by the military government. Then we all said, okay, it's because it's a military government. But now he has been pardoned by this current administration. The current administration seems to be falling into the same pit that administration did, and they are purportedly clearing the mess of the past administration, and they are falling in the same pit. Are we not digging? Are we not covering a pit by digging another one?
You see, for me, the country that we are in is a very complex entity. Okay, and going into history, you mentioned something very quick, and it's important to our discussion. That is the foundational, identity of Nigeria as a sovereign state. It's a whole, lot of issues. For me, I always see Nigeria as a kind of forced entity, because if you were to be a country, there are certain things in principles that should be done. People that want to be a country must sit, have their aspirations aligned, discuss issues, and see whether there is feasibility to that proposal. But here we are, a country that was hobbled together by some, non-Nigerians. Okay, you expect that to work within the context of people that were not there when the so-called entity was programmed. So we shouldn't go back to history. Self-determination, like I said, it constitutionally, and even in terms of democracy, we have right to self-determination. But that right to self-determination is constrained by constitutional principles. I want this. Then my request, my aspirations, my yearning, as long as I'm part of the country, should be within the principle of the law. If the law says that this is the extent to which you can go in your quest for self-determination, then you do it that way. So if you have to just contextualize what is happening to Nnamdi Kanu within the larger context of the Southeast issue, you waste time without even having any.
Talking about the legal part, I want to chip in something so you round it up.
Okay.
Talking about the legal part, Nnamdi Kanu has always maintained that he was kidnapped. He was not legally arrested. That is another legal tangle that always. That's something he has always stood on. Okay, even if I have a case to answer, why not come with a warrant? He has always maintained that he was illegally kidnapped from Kenya to Nigeria, and that is the only legal part. That's one thing he's always ready to fight.
There's a problem here, and the problem is just that we seem not to marry legality. You get the point now, to some of the principles that key into what we do as contained in constitutions. He was arrested. Remember, before he traveled to Kenya, he was arrested in the country, so he was given a chance to leave the prison. So, expect that people believe that he shouldn't have traveled. Okay, but he did, for a reason best known to him. Okay, now why in travel? Why away? Rather, he was accused of sponsoring violence upon violence in the Southeast.
Don't forget that he was away with the British passport.
I understand. Let me make this very clear. Okay, that's why I say it's a very complex discussion. So now US somewhere far away from Nigeria, but you are responsible to largely 80% of what happened in your region. Allegedly, you get the point. So he was accused of inciting violence, holding people in to destroy life and properties, to the extent of even declare stay at home. I mean, stay at home principle. Now that is still affecting the region till today. Whatever we may discuss regarding Nnamdi Kanu, we shouldn't forget the place of law. Nigeria is a constitutionally bound entity, even though that exists only on paper anyway. But the bigger thing is that if someone is accused of doing something, the best thing is to push that particular issue to court. Let the court determine. Okay? So like I did say, we have law. But the problem is just that our interpretation of law has issues. So it's been like almost 5 years now that it was extraordinarily renditioned. You get the point, back to Nigeria. So what is keeping that trial is that long? So there's no way, the moment such a trial that will have been actually dealt with within some specific period of time, if it takes longer than expected, issues like this will come up. Okay? And I blame the federal government wholly. They have their own motive. Remember, sometimes ago, it was the Court of Appeal actually freed him. It was the Supreme Court that said that no, that particular judgment ruling will not stand, claiming that freeing Nnamdi Kanu will result into something more devastating. So the government has reason why they're dealing with the issues that way. But for me, as someone who is not deeply conversant with the law, okay, I will say that the law has to take its course. But while doing that, we must be cognizant of the fact that that law that we want to take effect should not be tainted with political bias. As it is now, the case is becoming more political than legal.
Okay, but I would say that the government of this state can't we just accuse them of double standard? The same thing happened with Simon Ekpa, and his own case was finalized in Finland and is still serving in the finished sentence. And we have the same thing as somebody like Sunday Igboho. He confirmed in a radio program that he sneaks into Nigeria and out, which means nobody is on his neck to kidnap him. I think they are clamoring for the same thing, disintegration of this country.
Yes.
So why is Nnamdi Kanu so different?
I think for me it is the way we look at the Southeast as a region. Historically, I remember back in school when we were studying some poetry, one of our lecturers would tell us that I don't know why, from all aspects of life, the Southeast is always in the background. Why? These are people, they are very brilliant, I must say. They are brilliant people, brilliant writers, brilliant activists. As a matter of fact, these people have brilliant, resourceful people
exactly.
that are benefiting the country.
Some of the best.
So I think that's why I say that it is the problem of Nigeria as an entity. The issues of Southeast is traceable to the fundamentals of Nigeria as a country. So how do you perceive these people in the recent years that wanted to get independence? So what was their contributions in that struggle? Remember, what if you need to discuss all of this, we're going to go back to what happened, what led to the Civil War.
I don't want to go into that story because that's a whole lot of story.
For me, the alleged treatment, bias treatment towards the Southeast as a place in history. And that is the way we should see it. Historically, they've not been seen as people that are part of us. Many of us, Nigeria state is scared of the Southeast being in power. Okay? So now look at that entity. And we are running a country that should be based, that ought to be funded on democracy, that ought to be funded on constitution. So we are seeing a direct opposite of that, because this is a country that is fundamentally run on ethnic guises. So for instance, now we have a Yoruba, as a president, you see that sentiment tilting towards Yoruba people.
Originally we had a Fulani president,
we see the same thing. We have
Don't we all portray that thing? You know, when Buhari was about, everybody was very style of.
So, I think
and
the
then
point-
now we have Tinubu, everybody knew. You had the governor saying, you had purportedly saying that if you don't wear the Tinubu cap,
you will not be allowed to.
dismissed.
So the bigger point to that perspective is that we don't seem to be very much balanced. Our approach towards the Namikano case is extremely hard of point. You reminded me of how the state treated Sunday Igboho, how it treated. We cannot compare Samuel Ekpa with Namikano, of course, given the gravity of the offences that Namikano was, is accused of. But the point is this:
They were both accused of terrorism.
whether or not the state treated is treating Namikano differently the way they treated Sunday Igboho and others, people like him, is a question that we are going to answer as a people. That's why I say it's an historical issue. So Southeast, according to them, they've always been at the receiving end, and here is the issue. So if Namikano were to be maybe from the north or the southwest here, the issue wouldn't have been this prolonged. I tell you, there must have even been a kind of political solution very quickly. And even in all of this issue, you will see that the Southeast people are not even helping. So telling you that internal divisions in that region, coupled with what is happening in the bigger context. So not everybody understands the fact that these people are not being treated equally. But that's not the issue. The issue is just that the country itself has a problem of suspicion. We have a country that is not fundamentally based or created by the collective aspiration of the people. What is happening is inevitable.
Okay, let's talk about the troublemaker, the perceived troublemaker. Somebody that always say, okay, let them go, let us have justice. Somebody that always be behind bars. I think he's used to being behind bars. That is on the shoulder. He has come to say that Namikano has to be freed. He has been born. He was allegedly kidnapped inside the court premises. That was not the first time. I think there was a time he was kidnapped and the judge even ran away. How do you see the actions and inactions of in this case?
Two things are involved, okay? Activism and democracy, they are not enemies. As a matter of fact, core to democratic principle is protest. I don't see anything wrong if someone feels that he or she is not comfortable with what government is doing and is go onto the street to protest.
But what about you protesting in a restricted area?
Now, here is the point. I listened to him when it was released yesterday, and even as a matter of fact, 3 days ago, we spoke. Okay? No, yesterday we spoke. So now, the point generally is that we need to see this, we need to ask ourselves, is protest constitutional? That's one. Now, what are you protesting for? An issue is in court, you get the bonds down, and you feel that, so a case that is in court is not, ought to have been dealt with. You get the bonds down, and you went to the street to protest. So Roy and his co-protesters had fundamental reasons why they went on the street. Remember, I think 2 days ago, before he was arrested in court, he and Namikano met each other.
Yes, they met. They had different cases at the High Court.
If you see the way they reacted, symbolically, you see that spirit of brotherhood. So here is Yoruba and Namikano is allegedly Igbo.
Jure is not Yoruba.
Anyway, that's good. The point is this. Okay, so where is from the southwest? Why Namikano is from the southwest?
You can say Jure politically is from the Midwest.
So now let's see. We shouldn't just belabor the point. The point I want to actually address quickly is that you shouldn't confuse activism, because what everybody was talking about immediately when he protested and he was shot as he had to run, people were saying that people were trying to mock at him. We are mocking at the failure of the system. Like he said yesterday, the court's order that the states so quick, I don't know, that speed with which the states acquired the court order just to stop the protest was unprecedented. So according to him, they didn't serve them the court order. on Friday. The court order to be served to them on Friday.
Even on the court order,
Oh, so-
it was stated on the order that they must be served.
They must be served. So he said they didn't serve. They were not served. And they didn't protest at areas designated to be, out of bounds. So now let's forget about the fact that there was a court order in the first place, even though it was served, on them. It is so unfortunate that what you did as the state police is to shoot at them. You get the point, is that you release castles of tear gas just to suppress these people. But here's the point. If you have not taken in an Absulkadir case, far as the government has taken it, do you think Sowe and others will have protested? If these people didn't see, they were not stupid either. They were not stupid. They just felt that the case of Absulkadir is taking longer than expected. So they need to speed up. What they were saying is not that they should stop the case. They were saying that government should determine what the fate of that person should be, so that based on what the government has done, especially towards other people, who have that time to say that at least government is a little bit, balanced. So for me, that they went out to protest is not a problem. So if what they have protested for is wrong, we will have actually faulted the protest. But here, they said that no court order was served on them. And practically, they were right going out to protest.
But another thing is the body language of the government towards dissent voices. It has been a culture in Nigeria. No government wants to be spoken at. They always want to be spoken to. They want you to sit down and listen to what they say. They don't want. I think it's a culture. The kind of democracy we practice here is that the government speaks and everybody listens. I think they don't understand the concept of majority amongst the people. So now we have Shore being treated as an enemy of the state. We have others. Ribadu was once treated as an enemy of the state because he disagreed with the government of the day. El-Rufai was once treated as such. So when do we leave this state of?
You can't actually dissociate Nigeria from the experiences that people are having today. I told you something when I started the discussions. You cannot talk about Nigerian experiences today without talking about how the country itself started. Okay? One professor in the US, a Nigerian based in the US, made a point this morning on Facebook that it seemed to be pretending. He was trying to make a case around the recently concluded election in Cameroon. Okay? Look at that president. He has spent almost so he has spent decades in government. Now, let's use that as an example. You cannot have a progressive democracy if dissent is criminalized. The biggest question that people have been asking all of these years is such that it is when people speak against the government that governments sit up and do the needful. As a matter of fact, some policies that have helped countries develop, they were buoyed. These are policies that came as a result of people criticism. So if people criticize the government will take it as a plus to provoke action, to provoke initiative and policies that will develop the country. But that tells you that a government that is against dissent is practically against development. Because you cannot expect a country to develop when everybody speaks in one direction, even though you're doing major things wrongly. So if you have a policy, it is expected of democratic citizenship to say that this is not right. Government will not do everything 100% right. So, and part of critical citizenship is just that if you see something wrong, you say it. Then a responsible government will now take to what you have said and take corrections.
So Nigerians have always said things that they don't. But what about the body language of the government? The people that are in government today were very big critics of government after government, government after government, and now they are here. And the reverse is the case. They don't want to hear the same thing that they did.
I put it to you, it's our political culture. I think the earlier we realize that the normalcy, because the new normal now is just that if you say something, people being kidnapped all the way. We see journalists being kidnapped, we see activists being arrested, jailed, and all of that. It speaks to the forum of the fact that our democracy, instead of moving forward, is regressing. And the earlier we understand the fact that we cannot have an enviable country that we anticipate without accommodating divergent perspectives. I don't, you see, sometimes criticism is beautiful. I do something really bad. People tell me that this is bad. Then I sit up to correct that thing that doesn't happen again. So it is the question of our political principles, our political culture. A government that is tolerant of criticism, we see from the length and breadth of how it operates, where it needs to develop and where it needs to stop doing something. But generally, it is our relationship as people and government. The other time I was there, I made a point that it is the people that will change a lot of things that is wrong with Nigeria. And I don't think we are ready, okay? I don't think we are ready. These are people that mocked activists for risking his life, okay? Somebody, and look at it. So he has something to lose. 4 years ago, he lost his brother. His brother was killed by alleged assailants around Benin. His mom now is paralyzed. Okay, so you're talking about activists that have actually sacrificed a lot, and you are with your phone somewhere in the cozy part of your room, mocking.
You've seen a traditional ruler mocking somebody that went to prison because of activism.
I think we want a country that we want. It is now left for us as Nigerians to determine what country we want.
I think, thank you very much. That's a very good place to leave it. Thank you very much, our viewers. I think that's been a very lengthy and educating one. Thank you very much for your time. I remember myself of the country, Issiaq, once again. To have a lovely day. See you next week.